Thank you, Dr. Conte. We're back again. This segment, we want to talk about the KMC. The mayor met the president earlier last week as the investigation to the KMC are ongoing. Dr. Conte, we will recall that there was a commission set up, a 3-man commission set up to investigate the issue of corruption at KMC. Shortly after that, the mayor went to the State House to meet the president. We thought that was inappropriate. The mayor that was under investigation should not go to the State House to meet the president. With the purpose of influencing the president to intervene in the investigation. But nonetheless, that happened, and the office of the mayor, I believe, confirmed that the mayor visited the president to that effect. Also, what happened is that the KMC filed a suit in the courts to stop the investigation from going on. The courts responded favorably to that. The Justice Mahoney, I believe, actually agreed with the KMC and issued an injunction. A stay of the investigation right now. So the investigation is not going on right now; it's suspended, pending further notice, I believe. But nonetheless, it still adds to the fact that the KMC is facing corruption allegations and issues. This is quite interesting at this time when the new government is coming into office. We know that there has been a political rift between the mayor and the president, as well as the Ministry of Lands. Matter of fact, KMC's claim at the courts seeking the stay of investigations is that the Ministry of Lands, which instituted a commission to investigate KMC, did not have the powers to investigate KMC. The mayor alleges that the Ministry of Lands is abusing its authority. It does not have the legal authority mandate to investigate KMC in the way it seeks to do. We'll see how this plays out in the courts. I do think KMC may have a point here, and they could the courts can fine for them possibly. But it will be interesting to keep an eye on this and see how it unfolds. KMC, two major issues the KMC are facing is that the deputy mayor, I believe, is accused of soliciting bribes from private entities to the tune of, I think they talk about the amount involved is up to $1 million, I believe. And then the CEO, the lady has been involved in some dubious deals involving land. So those are the two main issues the KMC is confronted now. And the response of the mayor and the council in dealing with this issue, the internal investigations they set up, the way they went about it, are all subject of controversy right now. So we'll see how this plays out. But it will be quite interesting. Dr. Conte, also, we know that the local government and municipal elections are coming up, and possibly the mayor and the president through NPP may come to a face-to-face again. And this is true also as for the Banjul mayor, Rohim Malik Low. They are the two prominent faces of the opposition UDP, and their seats will be hotly contested, I believe. So we will see how all this unfolds. Meanwhile, Dr. Conte, any comments on this?
Well, I'm baffled to a point where I don't even know where to begin because we are talking about corruption
Mhm.
and what we should do in our country to fight corruption. And now people are hiding behind the Constitution so that they cannot be investigated. I, the president meeting with the mayor, in my view, was inappropriate because the mayor was seen as influencing the investigation.
Right.
And by KMC filing a suit in court against the inquiry is something as a fraud examiner. I'm not trying to mix the Constitution, but if someone is a suspect of fraudulent activities, corruption, I think the Constitution should not be used to stop that investigation. But saying that the Minister of Lands doesn't have the authority to investigate or to call for an inquiry is a slap in the face because the Minister of Local Government and Lands is entrusted to oversee municipalities. And if there is any uh, corrupt practices or suspect of corrupt practices, that's his responsibility domain to investigate. Uh, the mayor could have said that, why us? Why can't you expand the investigation? I think any citizen can file a suit or call for an investigation of municipalities because of some form of alleged corruption. But to have the mayor going in and then they try to hide behind the fact that the mayor is UDP and this is politics is something that I refuse to buy. In my view, people who commit fraudulent activities, I don't count them as belonging to any political party. I count them to be belonging to their own selfish needs. But if uh, okay, right now that is stopped, but it doesn't mean that it cannot proceed later on. And I think the Minister of Local Government and Lands should continue to fight for this because, and then maybe add other municipalities because I also had something about Brikama Area Council that to me is not sitting well. That if you buy property and you have to, only in the Gambia, a buyer pays for capital gains. I thought it should be the other way around. The seller should be paying for the capital gains because the cost basis of your property minus the fair market value is going to give you the capital gains,
Right.
whether it is a short-term capital gain or long-term capital gain. Someone told me, that they bought property in Brikama, in KMC, in West Coast region, and when they got to the gentleman responsible for the rates or the taxes, they assessed them capital gains, and the guy was going to go ahead and pay. He said, "Do I have to go to the bank to pay?" He said, "No, you can pay it to us." And he said, "No, I need to pay it at the bank." And the gentleman was actually asking, "Can I pay this online?" They said that they have the online in KMC and Banjul, but they don't have the online payment in Brikama. So the gentleman has to, they suggested to him, if you want to pay, you have to go all the way to KMC or Banjul for that transaction. So I'm wondering how many sales activities took place at West Coast region in fiscal year 2022, and what happened to the capital gains tax that the buyer paid for? Did we have 80%, 90% of the proceeds on capital gains going to the coffers of the government, or it went into their own pocketbooks? So if we can have some form of similarities in KMC and Banjul, how come we don't have the same in West Coast, Karawan, Masakonko, Kuntaur, Janjambure, and Basse? So this is not good. So it seems like we are tied when it comes to revenue. But people in our country, officials in our country, are living beyond the means of their own support. I call for an investigation of the entire municipalities. So if the mayor of KMC is saying that they are picking on him because he is UDP, then expand the investigation to all the municipalities, including Banjul. And someone told me that if they open an investigation in Banjul, it will be disaster. So these are things someone, okay, Mr. Kaur is coming in at a good time. So these are things that we need to talk about. So I'm just going to stop right here, and my friend, I hand it over to you, Mr. Jata. You have a guest.
Thank you, Dr. Conte, and welcome, Mr. Cho.
Thank you.
A little bit late to get in. We're on the second segment here. Nonetheless, you're very welcome to be on board.
He went fishing.
Good to see you again.
Listen, this guy is my in-law. You know,
my elder brother. My brother gave me 840.
Okay, well, I'm sorry. I sent you another one too. But anyway, let me tell you one thing. The Gambia is so small.
It is.
If you throw a stone,
yeah,
it might flip back on your face.
This is why when you said to me, I said, I just laughed. I said, this is a very small country. The Gambia is very, very small.
Yeah.
And when you talk about Faraba, you know, so I'm not saying anything now. I'm not saying anything. And Mr. Keba, where do you come from originally then?
I come from Nyomi.
Okay. See, we are all Nyomi in Kazande.
Yeah, actually, I think
you are not from Nyomi. Please.
Say it again?
I say you are not from Nyomi.
I think we have. I know one family.
If you had 3 generations in Combo, don't talk about Nyomi.
In Upper Nyomi.
I have loads of families in Nyomi as well.
Right, I would believe so, yes. But nonetheless, welcome on board.
You know Yaya Job. Maybe a lot of you will know him. He was once
absolutely, yes. Absolutely.
Yeah. He's my elder brother.
But like Dr. Conte was saying, Dr. Conte, I believe actually a lot of this is control issue. I think we need to many of these entities need to have robust controls. I think their internal operations are pretty slack. You know, the way the payments are made, the way revenues are collected, and the way they are recorded. I think there are a lot of loopholes where malpractice is possible. I don't know the people who audit these entities need to be very strict on looking at their internal operations and look for all these loopholes and try to seal them. There should be robust controls, that will make it difficult for money to leak in these ways. There should be, paying these things under the table or over the counter with no receipts, or sometimes steady receipts. All of these things open the door for malpractice to happen. So, so it's going to be quite interesting when these investigations go on in the KMC, and perhaps not only KMC, in other municipalities as well. Similar things may be uncovered where monies are being siphoned into inappropriate places. But I think that's the issue KMC has faced. But we'll see how the courts play this out. I tend to believe that KMC's, they may have a point at the courts. There's a possibility that the courts may intervene and restraining the Ministry of Lands, from going ahead with this investigation. It may be, the court's ruling may be without prejudice, so that at some point the Ministry of Lands may try to come back again in a proper way that complies with the law to deal with this issue. But it looks like the way they approach it at this time may have some legal problems. But we'll see how that plays out. I don't want to prejudge that because I'm not too sure how it is going to really play out. Mr. Chol, we were talking about the KMC issue. We know that the Ministry of Lands was trying to investigate corruption at KMC, particularly the two events that happened there sometime last year, where the deputy mayor was allegedly seeking bribe from a private entity to the tune of $1 million, and also where the CEO was involved in dubious land deals involving monies by the KMC staff. And then, it was reported that the mayor, after the setup of the commission, 3-man commission, the mayor went to visit the president's office, purportedly to ask him to intervene and stop the investigation. I think that did not work out, and then the mayor, eventually, the KMC filed a lawsuit asking the court to stay the investigation, meaning to stop the investigation. And the court did respond favorably to KMC, asking the investigation to stop for now until further notice. So I think that's where they are. But it also played out, all of this plays out into the bigger issue of corruption in the country. Earlier in segment 1, we were talking about a different issue, that was the inauguration of the president and how it all played out. Your party, APRC, under Fabak and Tombonjata, was very much featured there. 7 presidents from the region, West African region, attended. The president made a speech alluding to his development programs, infrastructure, good governance, rule of law, and all that stuff. If you have a quick comment on that, you can backtrack, make your comment on that, and then maybe you can weigh on the KMC issue as well.
Thank you very much. Alhamdulillah. I want to thank you once more for inviting me on this platform. Regarding the inauguration, it has already taken place anyway. Maybe what people expected and how they expected it to happen, it didn't go that way. And so therefore people will have their opinion. The fact of the matter is we don't know why it has gone the way it gone. What we must ask ourselves in the first place, this inauguration, is it a political event or is it a national event? If it is a political event, then obviously the matter should have been handled by the politicians in their own organization. But as a layman sitting here, I thought this was a national issue and it's a constitutional requirement that they're doing. I don't even know where this is happening in Europe, where inaugurations into offices, you invite nearly 8 presidential candidates to come and grace it. But it's Africa, that's our way of life. our culture, maybe it's a tradition, in order to convince the people around you or the region that you have a very good rapport or diplomatic relationship with, you invite 8 presidential president to come. If you have to do that, then you should be smart enough to mobilize the nation to come and support you. Or if that is not done, it's up to them. But I think if there's anything, we should also look at what's happening at the State House, who are surrounding the president. What sort of inauguration do they want? If you said you want a low-key inauguration, then you must not invite about 8 presidential candidates to come. But however, I think that is up to them. With regards to the APRC fraction that went with MPP, it's still up to them. Probably they are not satisfied with the way they've been treated. It is their right to express it. But if I were in their shoe, probably the way some of them did it, I would not have done it that way. But all the same, it happened, and we've got to move on. With this speech, I'm still looking into it because I thought the speech should be derived from the National Development Plan or from the manifesto that has been presented to the people by NPP. But as far as I'm concerned, it's an unfortunate situation. There are technocrats who drafted that and gave it to the president to read it. He's just there reading it. He does not even understand the. Honestly, I'm telling you my opinion. I've got nothing against Adama Barrow, because there are some institutions that should implement those things. This is where we are having issues with. You cannot implement such programs as highlighted in his speech when corruption is up there. So that's my. I sympathize with Adama Barrow. He made a very wonderful speech at the right time, but hopefully I don't think he will be able to implement all that he said with this present situation, with the present economic situation in the country. It's not only the country, even in the world. So I don't know what plans he has, but obviously we have to give him the benefit of the doubt to prove himself. I don't want to belabor on the inauguration at all, honestly. It's done. With regards to the KMC issue, again, I don't know whether you people have said it. Gambia, what we need to do is we need to institutionalize our government. The institutions are not working. They are not even pairing. We are in a model world today. There are certain institutions, they should be handled by people who not only intellectuals or academicians, but people who are, computer literate as well. I want to believe that today, even if you are educated to a higher level without any computer literacy, you are still labeled as an illiterate. And those things also need to go with an efficient running internet system, which is now part of our lives, even in our houses, everywhere we go. Internet now has become a necessity. That is an issue in the country. If you're talking about institutionalizing, you're talking about all these things, put them in place, you need to have all those things working. More so, the biggest, pandemic we have in the Gambia is the energy sector. This is, date in memorial, from PPP to APRC to now, the last government coalition and now the new one, MPP's government. This is an area that we have to focus on, because even if you want people to come and invest in the country, the energy sector should be efficient and up and running. Because these are areas that we kind of just look at. Oh, it's not only for us concerned. We're looking at other sector, bigger spectrum of the whole thing. And where a government is not thinking about, but only thinking of bringing a ship from Holland to come and station it in our rivers for them to be paying those people or connect with Senelec to give us electricity when we could have also done something. Probably the OMVG project, which is the what they call provincial or rural electrification, will help us. But the energy sector needs to be looked at. If that is not done, whatever it's doing is going to be. Because if you look at the issue of KMC, you have, an authority, a municipality that has got staffs, and those staffs have got a staff association where they have funds been handled by chief executive of that, and then still as a head of that institution, you don't even know what's going on. This is something you should, with the press of a button, you should be able to know exactly what's happening in your institution, all corners. But if people sitting out there, they don't even know how to press a button like Fodich or born before a computer, I don't know. So that's just my contribution. But I would have loved to be here before so I can learn from you, or I'll have to wait for the second segment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chol. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, absolutely, you're right. The lapses at KMC are quite palpable. I think it is surprising that the mayor cannot be exonerated. I think the buck stops at him. Although this is a staff firm, but the fact that the CEO has been able to pull off this scheme, and I think the biggest part is how the municipality responded to the allegation of the fraud, how their internal investigation took off, and how they dealt with it. I think that was even more implicating for the mayor than the actual act that the CEO did. And even the deputy mayor, I believe, his bribery issue and how the municipality dealt with it is also a very big issue. And I think the mayor can be seriously implicated or liable in these situations, in both scenarios. But again, like I said, we will have to wait and see how the courts deal with this, whether the investigation will actually take off or not, because currently the courts have suspended the investigation until further notice. So I hope we get to see more unfold as far as this. And to go back to the inauguration again, like you said, how the president is gonna, has made some eloquent speeches and ambitious plans, but you cast some doubt how he's going to do this. And you are right. You're very much right. I think in his speech it was also mentioned that the pledges made in Brussels, as far as the NDP plan was concerned, I think it was mentioned that only some 28% was actually collected of those pledges. That's a very low number, in terms of funding. And also, it was also said that the diaspora contribution, remittances, constitute something like 62% of GDP. If that is true, Dr. Conte, Mr. Chol, one might ask, what is going on in the country? Is there any productivity? How can a country go like that? So all of those cast a lot of doubt on whether really anything meaningful can be done. But again, we'll see how the Barrow deals with these issues in his second term. How he collaborates with his development partners to carry out some of his development ambitions for the country. Dr. Conde, you have anything briefly to say on this?
Oh, yeah.
Before I move on to my last segment. And
yeah, because the brunch you watch and the advisor, one of the advisors to the president, saying that he should only select people who support who are loyal to the president.
Yeah.
And then the government saying that the pledges that were made, only maybe less than 30% was received. So, as an accountant, if the president believes, that the entire proceeds or what was announced to be given to Gambia as a pledge should be recognized in the financial statement. And as an accountant, I say, no, why can't we use cash basis of accounting, meaning that we're only going to recognize what we receive? So if we projected 100% of the proceeds to be received, and only less than 30% was received, what do you think will happen to the president's agenda? So there is contradiction right here. And Mr. Chor said that the speech was made by someone, and the president already just read it. The question here is that the person who provided the written statement or statements to the president, do we have to agree everything that the person wrote down for the president to read to Gambians? Or do we have to question some or even all of the items mentioned in the speech? So if you disagree with what was written for the president to read, are you exhibiting some form of disloyalty to the president? So these are things that we should openly engage, because these items are not coming from the mouth of the president. They came from the technocrats. And what the technocrats envision for the country, the president is narrating them. And some of us will say, no, we don't think this is achievable. Because if you do what is going to happen, we're going to have a hyperinflation. So if the president says that we're going to borrow this amount of money, I say, Mr. President, if we do this, we are going to have hyperinflation. Am I being disloyal to the president? And based on my profession, I say, Mr. President, we cannot put down 100% of what was pledged to us in grants. Accounting says that let's use the cash basis of tax basis system, meaning that we're only going to recognize what we actually receive. So by me making a pronouncement based on my profession, am I being disloyal to the president? I think these are messages that we should send to Adama Barrow. And when we talk about corruption, we say, Mr. President, we have information that people who were living here in the United States, who ran to Gambia to be given positions, making about 500,000 Gambian dollars, 10,000 US dollars. We say Jammeh was corrupt. That's what we said. I raised my hand up. We said Jammeh was a dictator. I raised my hand up. Now, we have these people who have paid their mortgages in the United States. So if I say to Mr. President, you have corrupt advisors, am I being disloyal to the president? If I say again to Adama Barrow, we can tell you there are some of your advisors who also went ahead and bought second houses in America. Am I being disloyal to the president? Mr. Adama Barrow, if we say again, these same people who are saying that we will be disloyal, we are disloyal to the president because we don't support most of the stuff going on. How about these people who, within 9 months of coming to the Gambia, they were able to build houses and we don't know of where they got the income? I want to ask again, Mr. President, some of your supporters who are driving NPP vehicles, please help me. Who pays for the gasoline in those vehicles? We need transparency. He said APRC was a corrupt political party. You took their vehicles out from them. He said Jammeh controlled everything, and now you are with APRC. you are with part of APRC. Can we have accountability? So should we all sit down and just accept the status quo? No, we should not. Now you go to the market, you want to buy stuff, everything is expensive in our country. But those people who are advisors to the president, they are living beyond the means of their own support. So if we call them out, are we disloyal to the president? This is a double standard.
Thank you, Dr. Conte. Very well said. Yes, I do think though the president, it is okay for somebody to write his speech, but it is still, like you said, it's the president's responsibility to look at that speech and make sure he agrees with it and he understands it. He doesn't just have to regurgitate what somebody has put together. Actually, presidential speech writers don't write their speeches out of the blue in a vacuum. They usually collaborate with the president to make sure what they put on paper is something the president agrees with. And the president's responsibility ultimately to make sure what is written reflects, what he believes in and what he actually agrees with. So it is his responsibility, frankly speaking. These people, a lot of time, they are professionals, but they are political players as well. So they like to put up a speech that would put the president in the best light. But ultimately, it has to be factual. And the president's job is to make sure this reflects the truth and it's something that they agree with. So still the buck stops at Barrow to make sure that what his speech writers writing down for him to read is something he has looked over and makes sure it is something that reflects his beliefs and something that he actually understands and believes in. That's what I wanted to say. Mr. Chor, unless you want to add something to that, I'm going to move to my last segment and then we will wrap this up.
Yeah, I think you should move on because my landed brother has, actually elaborated on it. And when it comes to the language of accounting, we have to.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So, Dr. Conte, Mr. Chor, I just wanted to. There's an article. Actually, it's an interview that Dr. Chana Omar Bari did with the Secretary General of Pan-African Writers Association, none other than the Nigerian medical doctor, Dr. Wale Okidira. It is quite interesting to me, partly because I'm also interested in writing. I'm an amateur writer myself, and I'm really, really quite interested in literature, not just English literature or literature in English, but I'm quite interested in writing and African writers, the older generation particularly, the likes of Achebe, Soyinka, Peters, and all that. The South African writers as well. But something that stands out in my view in Dr. Bari's interview with Dr. Okidira is that the Pan-African Writers Association is an umbrella association that includes all the regional or national writers association. Gambia has its own writers association, and many countries in Africa has their own too. And I believe all of these are lumped together under the Pan-African Writers Association, headquartered in Ghana, I believe, currently, according to the interview. I did invite Dr. Barry to come and join us and probably shed a little bit more light on this. That would have been fair enough, but there was a breakdown in communication, so I couldn't get him here. Hopefully at some point I will. But the interesting part is that the Secretary General was complaining about funding. for this association. And some of the ways they tried to raise funds, to me, was a little bit controversial. And he talked about the role of Jerry Rawlings during his time in Ghana, supporting the association and, to a large extent, sponsoring it. And some of the ways they try to compensate for this is to have some of their writers put their writings together about these leaders, particularly Rawlings, kind of praising him and writing favorably about him and in return for his support for the and they wanted to do this for many African leaders for their support. That was the part I wanted to clarify with Dr. Barry, but if I had been able to get him, because that was a little bit controversial to me. I think writers, creative writers, should be allowed to explore their own interests, not to write favorably about a controversial leader like Jerry Rawlings with atrocious human rights records in Ghana. Just because he's supporting, it becomes, then we are setting the Pan-African Writers Association as a puppet, a stooge for leaders like that. John would disagree with me, but I would think Gambia would have been very happy to sponsor them too, to get their favorite, to get them to write favorably about him. And so that is a slippery road that can actually set them to become darlings of puppetry, authoritarian regimes in Africa. And unpopular authoritarian regimes who are seeking for some kind of accolade from some group. I don't think Pan-African Writers Association should fall for that kind of a thing. They need to, they could look for subscriptions and sponsorship from African regimes, fine. But the best way probably would be to use the market to raise funds. I think there's a lot of potential in the market for them to raise funds and support their activities. But writers, particularly, I think writers should really be focused on things that interest them, critical things. They should be critical of society, critical of political systems, critical of the world, I would say. And their writing should be based on that. If you look at our first generation of writers, our own Dr. Peters, I think is the most important Gambian writer so far. Of course, there are others like Du Bois and G.J. Roberts and others. And in Nigeria itself, Soyinka, and the like, Achebe, and others, even the romance writers in Nigeria. Nigeria is full of people who, we know the series, the pace setters. A lot of Nigerian writers in that group also. But all of them are critical of society. They look at events in society and focus on that rather than being a puppet of unpopular regimes. So I think the PAWA, meaning Pan-African Writers Association, was on a very slippery road as far as this is concerned. And I think they need to, it should be a subject of discussion whether they're going the right path or not. I don't know if you guys are interested in this issue at all, but I couldn't get Dr. Barry here, so our discussion will not go too far on this, but I will catch up with him on this. Dr. Conte, Mr. Cho.
Dr. Conte, you want to comment before?
No, you go ahead. You go ahead.
It is an interesting area. Would have been happy to have Dr. Barry here, probably a writer. I was also once a teacher, teaching at St. Peter's. And when I got married with my missus, who was also a teacher and a unionist, because I was a unionist in the Gambia, due to my political activities, she was really encouraging me to write. But being a lazy person, I've not still taken a pen put something down, but it would be interesting if I would be able to recap what I knew about the PPP regime and what I've seen 20 years of Jame, and then probably the young people will learn something from it. But like you rightly said, I'm also very keen. I used to be, not now. Very keen reader of African writers series, and I've got my favorite writers. But if you look at the way they do their writing, most of them look at what happened during the colonial time. They transform it into the present society. Some of them also look at the coming of the white man onto our land, how people welcomed them, how they accepted it, how the influence of the Western world had on our society, changing stuffs, and people letting go what we have. Like if you look at the person you call mentioned here, Chinua Achebe, if you look at his write-up of Things Fall Apart, and then the follow-up of No Longer at East, it's just telling you how our society disintegrated and subdued to the coming of the Westerners, and how our society, completely fall apart. Things like that, if you look at it, they encourage you. But if you come to what is happening presently, most of the writers, especially in the Gambia, they confuse our social setup and politics. They want to blend it, especially when it came to the point when, send me this, because I'm just reading that the Shadow of King, she just read it and said something about that, and the establishment, which really are very good books. They help you to start. But like you rightly said, this is something that people should encourage in the Gambia. But to set up a writers association, what we must first do is to encourage young people to read. Well, I know culture of reading in the Gambia is not, it's not encouraging at all. It will take me about a month to read this book, and it will take my missus just 1 week, because she'll concentrate reading it. At the same time, she'll finish another one when I have not even finished the first one I started. But that is because they have that culture of reading, and it helped a lot improve their literacy and writing skills. But in the Gambia, that is something which is really lacking. If that can be encouraged for people to read more, and unfortunately, this is still there. When I was going to primary school, when they will tell us areas of interest of visits, in Banjul, the only place they will take us is the library. The museum was not what it is today. And then we go to the Abuko Nature Reserve. When people come from Basef, exchange visit, we take them to Abuko Nature Reserve and to the library and back home. But actually, in those days, I could remember that they have a mobile library that goes around school and you borrow books on it. But now, I don't know whether it's still existing, but in order to have a writers association, or even help young people to come into writing, you have to encourage that culture of reading, which is really absent in our schools and in our society. But I think it is very good for us to do that. And the other thing is, we must invest and also try to get sponsorship for those African writers series, or write on relevant things about Africa. You mentioned about Jammeh, and I will still have a special program with you, and I'm more than ready to say and defend that the fact that you think Jammeh is a dictator, I don't agree with you on that. And with his government, 20 years of rule, that element of dictatorship was very good, knowing very well how the Gambian society is set up. And I think that was good, but that's a different one. But actually, what we should try within the diaspora is to set up such kind of organizations and invest in them and invest in our citizens. rather than sponsoring political parties to go on rallies and stuff like that. At the end of the day, what we need is we want to get back a reward. And they end up employing people who will be only interested in personal development. I can't believe what I'm hearing. You left the US within 9 months. You are able to pay a mortgage in US while you are in the Gambia. I've lived here nearly 18 to 19 years. I'm just beginning to be a homeowner here. I can't, and that is a lottery for me. How I got that? It's a lottery. So I cannot imagine. I've started building a house in the Gambia. I built one for my family. I'm building another one for myself, and it's just I'm doing it stage by stage. I cannot do it. It has taken me about 3 years for me to complete that. So I cannot believe how people can just leave, and it's true because I've seen somebody also who was struggling. Nearly was going to be asked out because he can't even pay rent. But the person has built a house in his family compound in the province and is almost completing a magnificent building somewhere in Jabang area. This is someone who is not even in a ministerial position or something like that. I don't know where they get the money from. They live a life that when I go to Gambia, I looked at them and said, where do they get the money from? Because I've lived in England for nearly 18 years. I don't know where they get the money from. So this is something that we need to encourage people to invest into. Young Writers Association, to invest into women, groups that are interested in agriculture or research in science and stuff like that. Probably that will help us because we have to build the nation through educating the younger people to change attitude. With the present system, like we rightly said the last time, we have to come with excessive laws that need to be imposed, so that if you break a law, you have to be dealt with. The Maslaha syndrome should go away. That Maslaha syndrome is killing us. And once I started to stamp my authority on corruption using no compromise, I am now described as a dictator. That's the problem. I'll give you a few examples if you want. Yeah?
Yeah, go ahead.
According to the president, according to him, I'm quoting him, he spent $700 million to purchase fertilizer. And then he stood on the platform and said, he is really disappointed the way and manner that has been done. And there was no commission set up to investigate that. You knew if something went wrong, you didn't find out to take a step. You're encouraging it. It's going to happen. And it will continue to happen. You were interviewed. I heard him say it. The permanent secretary at the Ministry of Fisheries did something. You said, oh, that is only one isolated case. That is, up till now, that case is still, lingering in the courts. It should be done quickly and then an example set. Now you talk about also, now you can go to KMC and want to investigate KMC. When those issues are there on your news, you didn't investigate it. It's just crazy. I can't understand. And I found you talking about receipts, about payments and stuff like that. We have to change our institution. They have to operate like, if we want to be like others, we have to operate like them. So this is where we are lacking behind because we want to compromise. The Maslaha syndrome is there. When Yahya Jammeh used to say, heads will rule, and he will say electric
broom.
Oh, exactly. Some of you will say, my God. And where he said, if anybody want to jeopardize,
and then Mr. Cho, that was the Operation Bulldozer too, right?
Exactly. And when he used to mention things like, if anybody wants to compromise the security of this country, I'm going to bury you 6 feet deep. Then everybody said, oh my God, he's a dictator, he's going to kill, he's going to create. But look, that is deterrent. When he mentioned it, then people said, look, when he left, we have a security issue because nobody cares.
Yeah.
That's some of the things. And then the other thing is, we all knew it's not about Islam. Let's be factual. What does gambling cost on our society, especially our young people. It has, health implication, criminality in society, and so many other things. So when he said, look, we are not going to have this, allow it in the country, let's just put it aside, he's a dictator. But if you go to the Gambia today, look at the people who are running the gambling industry. They are all foreigners. Most of them, their bank account are in the foreign land where they come from. What they leave in the country is what they use to run the country, their business with. Now today, our society, you have seen a lot of young people involved in gambling. For them, it's a simple way of doing it, but it becomes addictive. And it has an impact on your health, mentally, and everything. Some of them, because it's easy money, they are not employed. At the end of the day, what they do, they can kind of like go home, try to go and get one of my aunties. You sell that, you get money to go and gamble. That's why lot of people are now breaking into people's house, taking things like mobiles, televisions and so on. That may not necessarily be the reason for gambling, but these are things that people want to get money to go and gamble. And when it comes to the worst, those people who are in the gambling industry are going to leave the country and go back to where they come, because most of them engage Gambia or engage in gambling Gambia. So Jammeh said, please, we don't want this because it's going to have an impact on our young people who we want to groom to be our future leaders. That is dictatorship. So when they came, they said, well, this is it. It has to go. Now they are doing that's democracy. That is not democracy. People do not understand that, because people are doing what they like is democracy when they're infringing into the life of the rights of the others. You call that dictatorship. Is that what you call dictatorship? We were, during 20 years of Jammeh's time, we will sleep in our houses without worrying that somebody is going to break in. We will go out. No one will attack us. We will not be robbed of our watches that we wore. If you're from Europe now, they knew you're from Europe, probably the perfume you have and some of the things that you wear, you end up losing them. Today, if you send a car in the Gambia, you're paying $60,000 to clear it. And you have to pass through a process of stamps, 9 stamps, and each one you have to drop some money. That is what you call democracy. That's not dictatorship. And Yahya Jammeh, when he knows that, he'll say, look, stop all this bottleneck of bureaucracy, give them their vehicle quickly, pay what they pay and go. That is dictatorship.
Actually, Mr. Chor, I was just saying in the first segment, I was telling Dr. Conte that what was it again? Jammeh, during Jammeh's time, there was this fear factor that prevented a lot of corruption going on by public officials, because you don't know who is behind you watching you. And Jammeh could arrest you and put you in mile 2 without any warning.
Because
so everybody was cautious. One of my very good friends, who was a senior official in government, told me that at the time, that even officials are concerned, they are afraid of doing big parties, because you don't want to attract Jammeh's attention. If you organize a big party, Jammeh might spot you and become concerned that where did you get all this money from? So he may target you. So and that deterrent, I was telling Dr. Conte that that fear factor now is gone, and many people are just scrambling to enrich themselves, at the expense of the Gambian taxpayers. So, that usually happens in post-dictatorial regimes, like in Barrow's regime right now. But to go back to Pan-African Writers Association issue, I want to say that, there are a lot of good things they're doing. Just that this one element I'm concerned about, and I wanted to clear that with Dr. Barry. But, I have to acknowledge that there are a lot of good things that they're doing as well. Dr. Conte, do you have any comment on this?
Sorry, Mr. Jada, before Doctor comes, my missus just want to come and sit on my and want to comment something on the
Yeah,
Writers
go ahead.
Association. Do you mind? Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
no, you don't mind.
Good evening.
Good evening.
How are you?
Fine, fine.
Okay. No, I just wanted to talk about the Writers Association actually, because I think it's so important, particularly when you look at journalism and you look at fiction. It's so important that people are given that opportunity and encouragement to actually be able to write and to be able to express, because I think one of the problems that you have within Gambia is the relevance as well as some of the material. For example, we supply books, and we've sent books to educational establishments, but trying to find materials that are relevant is difficult, because actually there's not an abundance of African writers. And I think for people to really want to love reading as well, you need to have that relevance. And that really needs to be encouraged. So I think, I think if you have that Writers Association where you've got that encouragement for that raw talent coming up, I think that feeds back into society and increases the literacy of generations to come as well, because people will want to read if there is relevance to the materials, and also they can see role models moving forward and writing. So I know that there are there are currently some fantastic African authors coming through at the moment, like Marza Mengistu, who's an Ethiopian writer, that actually writes about the political sort of history within Ethiopia and the uprisings there. So if you have that association and it's active, then obviously people are getting the encouragement that they require. But the other thing that I wanted to add on to that as well is it's also a good background in terms of education as well, because I think, where you have a literacy or writers association, that boosts the literacy within the population generally. How do I describe that? Because you've got that accreditation, I suppose. I'm not articulating myself particularly well on this point, but what I'm trying to get at is the importance of literacy within a society, because if you have the higher your literacy, the more accessible the whole range of learning is to you. There is nothing that you can't learn without good literacy.
I agree.
Yeah.
So that was all I wanted to add anyway. So I hope that was beneficial anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
you for that contribution. Absolutely,
you.
that is very true. And we do have a Writers Association in Gambia, and many African countries do. However, like you rightly said, literacy is still quite low in the country. And I hope this improves. And the reading culture, too, is not very well established. There are a lot of aspiring young writers coming up. Myself, I'm working on two currently. Actually, one I've been working on for more than a decade. I can't get myself around to publishing, but my recent one, hopefully in a matter of months, I might decide to publish that. So I know there are a lot of, and this guy, Tijan Salah, I think Khalifa Salah's brother, has been encouraging Gambian writers for many, many years. And Cobra, I call him Cobra, Dr. Barry himself, he's the chair of the Gambian Writers Association. They're doing pretty good work. But yeah, like my sister rightly said, reading culture, literacy itself is quite low in Gambia. We need to do something about that and encourage people to read more and write more. Because writing, reflect issues in society, and it helps, improve conditions and, put the country, the dynamics of the country, the issues in the country out in the public for discussion. Like if you look at the apartheid South Africa, apartheid perhaps arguably is one event that actually created more writers, than anything. Apartheid South Africa created a lot of writers, from Brutus to Godimer, you can't even begin to count them. And all of these things add together to bring out the issues in South Africa to the forefront of global issues. So writers are pretty important. And that is why I was worried about PAWA's, Pan-African Writers Association's decision to embrace controversial leaders, and write about them favorably rather than look at them critically. So, but again, this is a fantastic contribution. Thank you for that, Mr. Joel. Dr. Conte, you have anything to say?
Oh yeah, for me, going to a Catholic school and studying English literature and comparing the grammar level of Gambians, even Gambian lawyers, and reading the newspapers, online newspapers of the Gambia, I am really disturbed. And also Gambians, most people who graduate from college, when they graduate, that's it. A lot of them don't do any follow-up on anything. And sometimes I wonder whether we are really an English-speaking country or we were speaking something else different. I've always said, like for the Mr. Fode Balde, he could be used, or the newspapers can use him. Even I discovered some grammatical errors, even in Fourier. And it surprises me, that do we actually even have an English literature in our high schools now, as we used to have when we were going to school? I don't know. So I think if you are able to write, you can express yourself orally.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you don't write, how are you going to be able to express yourself? So we used to say when we were going to school, we spoke the Queen's English. I don't think we do anymore. The absence of writing, I remember Father Murphy, in our English literature class, Gambians who graduated from high school during our time, you can compare their educational level to even someone with a 2-year college degree. We were good in English. And if you are good in writing, if you are good in English, you also may be good in math and science. Because if you cannot express yourself, how are you going to be able to understand practices? So those are things, that we have lacking in our government. And even the president's speech, sometimes if you read, you see some grammatical errors. I remember going to high school when we used to have a classmate who was using bombastic words. And our English teacher, Father Murphy, may his soul rest in peace, always used to tell him, stop using these words. And when we took the common entrance examination, everyone was looking to see whether this gentleman was going to pass English. No, he failed. So, I welcome writing because even though for me, I have transformed into looking at numbers. But for me to be able to understand numbers, I have to know the concepts. And for me to be able to write the concepts, I should know how to write. So I really liked it.
Thank you, Dr. Conte. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you,
maybe we would the chore to come and be the lead, whatever presenter, so that we can get his APRC people to come and we can engage them.
Absolutely. Dr. Conte, we'll talk about this offline.
Actually, what happened?
Plan something going
on. Actually, what happened? I am now trying to share the link to all my forums, so when we are on, they can come in. But I want to say something. Actually, Mr. Dr. Conte, I think you're right. Look at some of the press releases that we're getting from the government. Sometimes the language, the wordings that I use, I don't think it is for a simple Gambian to understand. Why do you have to go with that so elaborated words to use in your press releases that people cannot even understand? I'm talking about your friend Ibrahim Sankare and how he presented it. And I knew Ibrahim very well when I was at college, my final year at the Gambia College. He was in sixth form, and I knew that is how he grew up. That's how he sees himself to be somebody using the language in the way he wants it. Bombastic words. Kind of like bombastic words, because he got a very good vocabulary. But it's not helping us now. If he wants to put something across, please tell him to be as simple as possible. Because what is important for us to understand in his press releases, is the message he's putting across. So a lot of people, before they finish reading his press release, they have to have a dictionary next to them to be able to understand the point of his use. What's the point? And that is sometimes, and not forgetting that the president that they are dealing with, the person who is supposed to come out, is not privileged to go to that level. That's our problem. We have to accept the fact that sometimes some of these things that happen to us is caused by ourselves. Honestly, please, I want you to convey this message to your friend, to be as simple as possible, so that people can comprehend what he is trying to put across. No, especially when it comes to APRC. Oh yeah, Jami. Anyway, thank you very much for having me once again.
Thank you, Mr. Cho. Thank you, Dr. Conte.
Yeah, Dr. Conte, thank you.
Yeah. So we will
meet again next Sunday. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, so the two of you can communicate, and then you decide what you want to do tomorrow.
Mr. Cho, I added you on Facebook. I request your friendship on Facebook. Go ahead and add me, please.
Yeah, if you send it, I will add you, and then probably next time I'm going to be the presenter. And then I'll be asking questions about it.
That will be APRC Day.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, guys. We'll see.
Thank you for having my message on the platform. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Take care.
We'll see you again.
All right. Take care. All right.
Bye-bye.